for the introduction. I'm really excited to join you here in San Francisco. Thanks for joining us. We're going to talk about, and typically when we do so, we talk about things that are over there. We're going to focus on tools that you can use in your local containers. Here's the part where I tell you I am definitely opposed to the slide. There are no slides. This is it. Now the tools in this GitHub gist, and so if you head out to GitHub, in Kubernetes, how we build things, and you can get to it. Really head out to robrich.org. We'll click on presentations. Here's making the link to the gist. So all of that content that we're going to do is live demos. It is really fun. robrich.org. Let's head out to About Me. Thanks for the introduction, Sandeep. We talked about being a developer advocate for Cyril, Microsoft, and a friend of Redgate. Camp is really fun. AZ Gift Camp brings volunteer developers software. We start building software Friday after work, Sunday after charities. Sleep is optional, caffeine provided. If you're in Phoenix Camp, or if you'd like a gift camp here in San Francisco, or wherever you're connected, Twitter, and let's get a gift camp in your neighborhood too. Some of the Docker and Kubernetes training and consulting. Pardon me. And one of the things on .NET Rocks podcast episode, they read my comment on the air, and they said, there's my claim to fame, my coveted .NET Rocks mug. So we're going to start easy. We're going to walk through way differently to visualize container contents, to start both in Docker and Kubernetes mode, and to debug. Now, let's start a little bit easy. I have in VS Code, and I have this Docker file. Now, this is for this node server, and I want to start this quickly. So I come to the command line, build, and apparently I need a dot, not sure what that's, but it doesn't go here, it goes here, and node v0.1 to try and keep in my head. Next up, I need to run it. Docker to specify the hello node v0.1 again. Do I need, but I need to map the ports, except for that actually goes -p 3000 to 3000. The brain energy trying to remember how to build and run a container. Let's use Docker Compose. Now, the cool part about Docker Compose is build and run details so that you can just say Docker Compose. Here's the hello node v0.1. Here's the ports, all that I needed to set. So let's do that. Now, the cool thing about Docker Compose is that an image doesn't exist yet. It will automatically build the container. So now my website is running on port 3. There to localhost 3000. See my web server running inside that container. I bet, oh, I know why. Localhost, there we go. Now, just as easily see, and it will spin down. Now, in this case, my machine's doing quite a bit right now. But while it's coming, oh, it just stopped. Docker Compose down. Now, you may be familiar with Docker Compose, in which case, network mode of bridge. Now, by default, we create a new virtual network. Well, what if I have one Docker Compose file backend API, another Docker Compose file for my data, trying to debug a front-end application? I want to start both of those. Well, by default, if I start a Docker network, those two won't be able to communicate with each other. It won't create that virtual network. Now I can start my data stores, and those containers can communicate together, and that's perfect. So that was a good get our motive bridge inside of a Docker Compose file. Let's see. Now, I definitely can come into a desktop, and I can come into Kubernetes mode, and I can enable Kubernetes differently. Now, Docker Desktop is great. Isn't great in nested virtualization scenarios. And so Minikube is free and open source. And Minikube allows me to segment and Kubernetes clusters inside of other. I have a Minikube cluster running inside of a. Now, I also have other virtual machines set up. So I have one Linkerd so that I can test each one and they won't conflict. If I say Minikube shell PowerShell, it's going to spit out how to connect to this environment. Once I've got these environment variables set, then I can run. They were just here on my local machine. So we can now in Docker Compose, the default in Minikube, it's the batteries included internally, all of these containers included by default. So let's do that dash V K8S, because I just happen to know that K8S. That's pretty cool. So now I can see, and in this case, there aren't any. Now, Minikube internals exposed version, it doesn't have some of the niceties that we like automatically proxying localhost for both volume connecting to localhost colon whatever port that was. I'm going to whatever that port was.
Rob,
similarly,
Rob, sorry to interrupt, but your audio's gone worse. Is it possible to close some applications, maybe clear that up?
Microphones.
So any application that you're currently not using, maybe they are causing something. Your the sound seems to be quite degrading right now. Let's give it our best shot and start again.
There we go. Is that better?
Not, but okay, we have to continue with the presentation, so let's give it a shot.
Okay. Minikube is the batteries included internals exposed proxied automatically. I also don't get volumes proxied automatically. Mount where I'm mapping this particular folder in. So now in my Docker Compose file, I'm going to reference. Now another way to do this, let's when I'm training with Docker, ask me about, hey, where, and all I can really say is WSL V, and I'll say it's in there. Minikube SSH. Now you can't do this with two Minikube, and let's take a look around. var lib docker. Now, where they're in here, and you can actually go to, notice how I did a sudo su to be able to get into virtual machine. You can install content, you can Minikube with the batteries included, internals exposed for that content. That is amazing. So now I do need to set those environment variables. In particular, I'll set those environment variables here inside VS Code by going to my settings, and I'll just, so that now VS Code can get to the containers as well. So we got to see how we could launch, we got to see alternate runtimes. Next, let's take a look at quick rebuilds. Now, I would love to be able to do, I'd love to be able to say Docker watch. Now, don't do that, but let's do scaffold. Interesting, because it does add the similar type of watch. Start out saying scaffold in it, and it will write out this YAML file that would like to automatically rebuild. That's cool. Our scaffold file, and right here, YAML, and it's going to reference our image. Here's that image. And then it'll run this Kubernetes YAML. On that Kubernetes YAML file, we could optionally push this image into it, automatically rebuilding. So let's pull this up, and then let's modify this server. Now, right now it says, hello, Big Mountain Data and Dev. I don't want to do that. I'll scale by the bay. Automatically, scaffold notices that change automatically, or my image optionally pushes that to a registry and Kubernetes. So if I rush, I can see this, and here's my pod running right here. Refreshes. Let's go to minikube : we've already got the new version in place. Excellent. If I come back in here to at the, nope, not there, there, and it will automatically rebuild place. That is excellent. Docker watch-like experience. That's really fun. Let's next. Oh, there's a new version of Scaffold. Very nice. Visualizing our cluster, or visualizing a container. World v0.1. That's the image that we look at. Dive. So here's Dive. And visualize the contents of our container. Now, so we can say Docker history code v0.1, but command that was run and the size. It doesn't tell files. That's where Dive can really help us. Here's Dive. Hello world v0.1. Did I spell it right? And that's interesting. Let's try it here. Node. Oh, hello. Docker image list. I'm confident I'm there we go. Hello node. Hello node. And let's cruise around through this image. Here we go, through the layers in this image. So I'm going to close a few slides. Let's close these folders, and then let's folder the layers in our Docker file. So we started out by an image, then we've got some more stuff. Here's where we got into place. And then here's where our Docker file started. Worked, that's excellent. Next, let's come here and we'll see that, well, we probably copied too much. Our Docker Compose in our Docker file. Need to adjust my .docker ignore. It looks like we have an ignore. So now I'll ignore things like no and my Docker Compose Docker file. And so now I've got all of my Baffled was still running. It would automatically rebuild my thing and I can push. So Dive is able to help us wander through our container, optimize that into place to save. Sometimes I'll also use Dive to be able to look and see if my container won't start. So we got to visualize clusters in a similar way that we things from the command line. Lazy Docker. Now Lazy Docker is really interesting. Another open source project is the Docker side of a cluster. So if we're using Top or Docker Compose, we'll be able to see this content. Isn't that cool? If you're using Windows Terminal, or like click on the screen, if you're using an old, but let's flip over and let's take a look inside of our cluster. Here are the run all of the containers associated with Kubernetes here, and take a look at some of the container. I love that they can create these stats, not the storage provisioner. Let's go to, there's Cube controller. It's fun to be able to create it, but not running. Okay, let's pick one that is running. Nope, that's going to be a fail. But it's really cool to be able to and our volumes. We get, oh, it looks like this right panel isn't, we can run this a little bit differently. Lazy. There we go. Storage provisioner, and we can take a look at the stats associated to see graphs inside of a console. I'm going to click cruise through this config file. You notice how when you run scroll back up, wouldn't it be cool if you could just scroll up and cool? So in the same way, we were able to visualize this using UI tool as well. So let's say Docker Compose. Look at, it's a really excellent tool to be able to visualize the Docker side of our cube, or with Docker Desktop, or anywhere where we have a Docker daemon. The Docker Compose file for started that up in a really elegant way. So now localhost 9000, and let's do. Oh, is it not running? In the wrong directory. Let's get into the right directory. We'll have our Portainer running. There we go. The Portainer running. Let's take a look at our, we've never logged in before, so it's going to invite us to set a password as part this demo is setting the password. A remote cluster running on Azure or another cloud cluster or on-prem cluster. We could connect to another environment. Now it tells us that we need to map the Docker socket to read into the Docker configuration. And so here in our Docker socket mapped into place. We've also got
Rob, we are
volume
at time, so if you can close out, that would be nice. Thank you.
Cool. So this was, look me up on Twitter at Rob_Rich or grab RobRich/presentations.
Yep. Excellent. I posted the link onto your presentation, and we are at the moment ready to head out to spatial chat. So Rob, can you please head out to spatial chat and people can ask you questions? I don't see any questions.
I'll be there in a minute.
Okay, thank you very much.